It began on a quiet gray morning at St. James's Palace, the kind of morning where London fog blurs the outlines of guards and the rhythm of royal life moves like clockwork, calm, precise, predictable. But that illusion was about to shatter. Just after 7, a black sedan pulled through the private gate. At first glance, it looked ordinary, nothing to warrant a second thought. Yet for one watchful guard, something felt wrong. The license plate didn't match the record on file, and the rear of the car sat a little too low, as if weighed down by something heavy. That small detail, a fraction of an inch, would soon unravel one of the most explosive scandals the palace had faced in years. Inside the car was Tom Parker Bowles, the Queen Consort's son, a man known more for food columns than royal controversies. He looked tired, tense, and distracted. His eyes avoided contact with the security post as he handed over his clearance card. The guard, Sergeant Whitmore, had served the palace for 2 decades. He had seen every kind of arrival: ministers, dignitaries, even royals in moods best left unmentioned, but never this kind of unease. Procedure dictated that every car, no matter who drove it, could be inspected at the guard's discretion. Most times it was a formality. This time it wasn't. "Sir," Whitmore said carefully, motioning toward the back, "your trunk seems unusually heavy. We'll need to take a quick look." Tom's reply came sharp and immediate. "That won't be necessary. Personal materials. Private." But the tone, clipped, defensive, only deepened suspicion. Whitmore signaled to another guard, and the courtyard's atmosphere thickened. Inside the palace, Queen Camilla was reviewing paperwork with her morning tea, unaware that her son's visit had triggered an alert. Outside, tension built as Whitmore ran a quick scan. The detector showed dense metal mass, cold, compact, far beyond normal luggage weight. He repeated his request. Tom hesitated, jaw tightening. "It's nothing important," he muttered. Still, protocol left no choice. When the latch finally clicked, the air seemed to stop. The trunk lifted open to reveal a sealed metal box, rectangular, scratched, bound by a combination clasp. The kind used for transporting classified materials, not cookbooks, not manuscripts. Whitmore frowned. "We'll need to see inside." Tom shook his head. "You don't understand. It's personal, extremely personal." Before the standoff could escalate, another car rolled through the gate. A dark Range Rover bearing the crest of the Prince of Wales. Prince William stepped out, coat still buttoned, expression unreadable. The guards straightened instantly. He looked from his stepbrother to the trunk. "What's happening here?" Whitmore explained in a measured tone. William's eyes lingered on the locked box, then on Tom's trembling hand. Without raising his voice, he said, "Give me the key." Tom hesitated, then exhaled and reached into his pocket. The key glinted silver in the dull morning light. When the lock turned and the lid opened, the courtyard fell silent. Inside, wrapped in tissue and ribbon, were bundles of handwritten letters, each bearing the unmistakable looping script of Princess Diana. For a moment, no one moved. Even Camilla, now stepping hurriedly into the courtyard, froze at the sight. The handwriting was more than familiar. It was sacred. That night, long after the courtyard had cleared and the press remained blissfully unaware, William sat alone in his private chamber. The box lay open before him, its contents spread across a mahogany table under soft lamplight. The ink had faded, but his mother's voice seemed alive in every line. Notes to friends, reflections on her sons, and one page that made his chest tighten. "If anything happens to me, it will not be an accident." These weren't mementos. They were evidence, fragments of Diana's private fears and suspicions, removed from royal archives that were supposed to remain sealed forever. William's mind spun. Who gave them to Tom, and why now? Each possibility felt worse than the last. His mother's memory had already been twisted by tabloids for decades. Now it was being handled like contraband in the back of a car. He placed the letters gently back into the box, locking it again. This wasn't just a security breach. It was betrayal from within. By morning, the calm order of royal routine was gone. Phones rang incessantly behind closed doors. Senior aides whispered down corridors lined with portraits of monarchs who had survived wars and scandals alike. The internal message was clear: contain this, fast. Officially, nothing had happened. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth was a ticking bomb. Queen Camilla was furious, though no one could tell if it was at the intrusion or at her son. She insisted that the letters had been entrusted to her, that she had only asked Tom to hold them temporarily. Yet archivists found no record of any authorized transfer. To the palace's legal staff, the explanation didn't hold. Even King Charles looked worn, caught between defending his wife and protecting the crown. "Handle this quietly," he told his private secretary. "If it leaks, the monarchy won't survive another Diana." But William refused silence. He summoned the head of royal security and demanded a full inventory of every item logged under the Princess of Wales collection. The list showed no missing documents, which meant one horrifying conclusion: these letters hadn't been misplaced. They had been stolen. That afternoon, Tom Parker Bowles sat in a high-ceilinged room, the same one used for private disciplinary hearings. He looked smaller than usual, his humor and composure stripped away. Two investigators, one from the Royal Household Office, another from legal counsel, asked questions in calm, deliberate tones. How did he obtain the letters? Who gave them to him? Where were they headed? He repeated one line again and again: "I only meant to keep them safe." When pressed on what that meant, he faltered. He claimed he'd received them from someone close to the archives, a vague phrase that offered no clarity. He insisted he had no intention of selling or leaking them. But the fact remained: he'd been leaving the country. His passport showed a one-way flight to Lisbon, booked under a secondary surname. That was harder to explain. Camilla visited him briefly afterward, eyes red, voice trembling between motherly concern and royal calculation. "You've put us all in an impossible position," she whispered. Tom said nothing. He knew the gravity of what he'd done, or perhaps what he'd been caught doing. Hours later, the royal family gathered at Clarence's house. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, muffling the noise from reporters already swarming outside the gates. King Charles sat at the head of the table, Camilla beside him, her hand clasped tightly over her pearls. Across from them, William and Princess Anne sat rigid, the locked box resting on the polished wood between them like an accusation. Charles began slowly, his voice tired. "We are not here to fight. We are here to prevent this family from tearing itself apart." Camilla broke first. "Those letters were given to me by your mother," she said to Charles, "years ago, when she was still alive. She wanted me to keep them safe from the tabloids." Anne's expression hardened. "That's impossible, and you know it. Mother cataloged every item after Diana's passing. Nothing left the archives without signature or seal." William's restraint snapped. "Those were my mother's words," he said quietly. "Not yours to protect, not yours to hide, and certainly not yours to hand over to your son." The silence that followed was crushing. Even Charles couldn't meet his eyes. For a moment, the future of the monarchy, the very idea of continuity, hung on what would be said next. Finally, the king spoke. "Camilla, you will step back from all ceremonial duties until this is resolved. The collection will be reviewed by independent archivists. And Tom," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "you will leave royal grounds immediately. No public appearances, no statements." Camilla's voice trembled. "You're punishing family to protect image." Charles looked at her, his face drawn. "I am protecting the crown," he said softly. From us. The meeting ended without another word. Camilla left first, head held high but eyes glistening. William remained seated, staring at the sealed box. The past, the betrayal, and the truth he could never make public. By dawn the next day, secrecy had failed. The story broke in a single devastating headline. Camilla's son detained after palace guard finds Princess Diana's letters. Within hours, every major network picked it up. Photographers camped outside Clarence's house, speculating wildly about stolen diaries, hidden wills, and even conspiracy theories tied to Diana's final years. The palace issued a terse, carefully worded statement. A routine inspection led to the retrieval of personal documents belonging to the late Princess of Wales. The matter is being handled internally. But the damage was done. The public didn't need confirmation. They had their story. Talk shows replayed William's past comments about his mother. Hashtags calling him the rightful heir of her legacy trended for days. For the first time in years, public opinion swung decisively in his favor and against Camilla. Every photograph of her exiting a car became a meme. Tabloids painted her as the keeper of royal secrets, the woman who tried to rewrite history. Approval ratings plummeted. Even veteran royal correspondents admitted they'd never seen the monarchy's image so fractured since the 1990s. Through it all, William remained silent. When a reporter shouted a question as he entered Kensington Palace, he paused only once. "My mother's memory belongs to history," he said calmly. Not secrecy. It was 10 words, but they echoed across Britain like a verdict. Inside the palace, lines were quietly redrawn. Staff once loyal to Camilla found their responsibilities reassigned. Meetings between her and Charles became shorter, more formal. Rumors circulated that the king's private secretary had recommended temporary separation of schedules to stabilize public perception. Anne, ever the pragmatist, advised caution. "We've survived worse," she told her brother, "but only when we faced it together." Charles nodded, but his eyes betrayed fatigue. In his lifetime, he had waited longer than any heir for the crown, and within a year of wearing it, the institution was once again at risk from scandal, heartbreak, and ghosts of the past. Meanwhile, the recovered letters were returned to the royal archives under new security protocols. Only 2 copies existed, one sealed in Windsor, another under William's personal authority. For historians, it was a victory for preservation. For the family, it was a wound that would never heal. Tom withdrew from public life entirely. Friends said he spent months abroad, avoiding cameras, writing in isolation. When asked years later about that morning, he only said, "Some memories are too heavy to carry." Months passed, and yet the shadow lingered. The monarchy, polished and public as ever, carried on with engagements and ceremonies, smiling for cameras that now watched more closely than ever. But behind closed doors, the silence was uneasy. One evening, William walked alone through the dim corridors of Windsor. Portraits of his ancestors stared down, kings, queens, and one photograph of his mother, smiling beside him as a boy. He paused, remembering her laughter, her resilience, her warning written in trembling ink. "If anything happens to me, it will not be an accident." He stopped outside the vault where the letters now rested. Guards saluted as he entered. The box sat on a pedestal, sealed and untouched. He placed his hand on its cold surface, not as a prince, but as a son. In the end, the scandal faded from headlines, but not from memory. The world moved on, distracted by new politics and old rivalries. Yet among those who knew the truth, the lesson remained. Within the walls built to protect power, the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept for love. As dawn light broke across the Thames, the palace bells rang softly for Sunday service. Tourists gathered, unaware of the storm that had passed through those gates only months before. Inside, life returned to order, or at least the appearance of it. But some fractures never truly heal. They simply go quiet. The box remained locked, the letters sealed, and the question whispered across generations: what else lies hidden beneath royal silence? Because in the House of Windsor, history is never past. It's just waiting to be found again.